Well, I am here in the blacksmith shop with Goober the Traveling Bear, and we have Park Ranger Mr. Chris. And Mr. Chris is going to talk to us about what?
The blacksmiths that were in the Civilian Conservation Corps. So even in the 1930s, there had to be guys that were able to forge metal, and before we had major factories to stamp things out with machines, you still had to make a lot of things by hand. Today, I'm representing one of the boys or the adults that came to teach the boys how to become blacksmiths, which was a very well-paid trade at the day. And today, I'm going to do a little bit of blacksmithing for you. I have a piece of steel in the forge right now. So the first what I'll need to do is I'll need to stoke up the fire. But here's an example of what I'm going to make.
Okay,
Here's a nice S-hook.
An S-hook.
This is a popular item even back into the 1700s because you can see I can hang it off of a doorknob or anything else, and I can then hang a different item onto it. They're very convenient, and you can chain these together to have a whole bunch of them if you need to lower, say, a pot closer to the fire. You just hang a hook onto a hook onto a hook, and it lowers it closer. Or if you need to lower the temperature, you just take one off and it gets higher. So I'm going to excuse myself for just a little bit to crank the bellows.
Go right ahead. I'm going to let the camera just go, and people can see how this is being done.
All right.
So as you add air to the fire, it gets hotter.
Correct. What I'm burning is coal. This is a form of fuel. It's a very dense carbon that forms underground when peat bogs gets buried under sediment. And so when we dig it up, it becomes very good dense fuel that burns hot when you get it started. So what I'm doing is I'm cranking my bellows, which is pushing air into the fire, which is making the coals burn hotter, which will then heat up my metal. Now this may take a few revolutions to get it nice and hot though, so stay tuned for a second.
All right. And I'm letting this video go so you can see the entire experience. This is one of the many blacksmith videos I've made. Village Blacksmith in Gloucester, Virginia, and the Blacksmith in Old Bedford Village, and so forth. Also Jerusalem Mills.
All right, that looks good to me. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to take my steel that's nice and hot here. I'm going to take it onto the horn of the anvil, and I'm going to curl it. I'll stop hammering so you can hear me. I'm going to curl it on the horn here and curl it around, and then I'm going to stick it back in the fire to heat up the other end so I can make the other side of the curl.
All right, go ahead and hammer away and get the full effect of
Now this one's going to be a fairly large hook, but those are useful too when you need a longer distance. So now I'm going to need to stick the other end in the fire and heat it up as well.
All right. Now, while you're heating that up, Chris, I presume blacksmiths had big arms.
Oh yeah, you definitely over time, you build up the muscles in your forearms because you need to use a fairly heavy hammer. And these here, you're going to swing it and smack the steel pretty hard. So over time, you build this up. I've actually found my forearm has built up as well because you have to have the strength to hold the hammer and your wrist stiff. So yeah, I've definitely added some mass onto there over the years.
So working at Fort Frederick can also be like working out at the gym.
Yeah, in a way, if I do this for long enough, my arms get pretty tired. There's actually been some evidence found from some things that I've looked into in my own personal research. You can see in historical artifacts when the blacksmith started getting tired because his swings started missing and his hits were slightly not perfectly aimed. And you can see that in the way that the artifacts were shaped. There's some pieces that aren't perfectly straight like they should be because he probably missed because his arm gave out on him before he could finally strike it properly. It's kind of interesting to think blacksmiths are people too. We all get tired. Alrighty, here we go. Now the other end is hot, so now I'm going to take this and I'm going to bend the rest of it. However, this time I'm going to bend it in this direction to make the S shape.
Okay.
Oh, that happens occasionally. You just pick it back up. That's why you don't have a very flammable floor in a blacksmith shop, because that will catch on fire. It's also why you see that I have to grip the tongs very strongly to keep it in the jaws. At this point, I'm just kind of straightening it out to make sure it's not all wonky. I'm a bit of a perfectionist at times. Alright, and now there's that. The one hook curled a little more than the other, but that's alright. Nothing a little bit of refining could take.
Very nice.
This right here is a functional S hook that you could use for any sort of thing that you need to hang things off of.
Now, as a blacksmith from the 1930s, your Civilian Conservation Corps, what would you be making for them?
A lot of different items. I'm just going to put that in my water to cool it down so I don't burn my hand with it. Because even though it's not glowing, it's still very hot. So the blacksmiths during the time of the siege, they were here making all of the hinges for the barracks building, or not the barracks buildings, but all of the structures, such as the building I'm in right now. The big iron hinges that the doors are attached with were made by the Civilian Conservation Corps Smith. Bill, if you want to turn around and look at those.
So, and you're still hooked up to the mic. So as I check out these different hinges, you can keep talking, Chris.
All right, so you can see where the doorknob and the modern padlock is. That big, really fancy strap right there, that was made by them. Then if he looks over to the left, you can see the more rusted looking strap for the door. That is a big hinge that was also made here. By the square bolts that are holding it in. That's a more old-fashioned style of nail holding it together. There's that old drill press right there, which we believe is from that time period that we were able to salvage and bring here. We have our big grind wheel, which I actually used this morning to clean a little bit of rust off of some pieces of metal I have. It's actually really cool because it's kind of like a bicycle. You just kind of sit on here and start pedaling. And you see this time it's rolling towards me, but if I stop and start going the other direction, it'll roll this way. I don't have a piece of metal with me, but the idea is you would sit this on here, and because it's an abrasive wheel, it'll grind all of that dust off, and you'll get your rust and get nice clean metal. Of course, that's also why you oil when your finished product, because the oil will keep the metal from rusting. They also made a lot of other things, such as handmade nails you need a lot of nails to build a building. If you've ever seen what's called a rose head nail, where there's kind of looks like rose petals or a 3-strike pattern on the top of the nail, but the shaft of the nail is a square, that is a rose head nail. We had several thousand of those were made here by the blacksmith in the seas to build all these buildings. In fact, those square nails on the strap behind you that Bill showed you, he'll show you here again.
I'll turn around.
That right there is a type of rose head. Now that one has 4, I'll call petals. You can see the 4 strikes to make it into the square. You can see the angles of it being mushroomed out to widen the head. That all has to be handmade. There are dyes you can get in the modern era that do that, but there's something less fun about that, in my opinion.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chris. Before we close this out, is there anything else you'd like to say before I move on to my next station?
Well, of course, definitely come out sometime and talk to me or any of my fellow coworkers, especially Robert Ambrose, the main ranger in charge here at Fort Frederick. We're a really awesome historic site. We have many major stories. Goober has loved listening to me tell him the story. He keeps wanting me to remind him of the seas all the time. So, yeah, definitely come out and talk to us sometime, guys.
All right, and we're in
Big Pool, Maryland.
Big Pool, Maryland. Thank you for your time, Mr. Chris.
Of course, anytime.